Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. Happy July 3rd, 2024. We have a Bachelorette Kaitlyn Bristowe video to get to. I'm going to discuss some other things, too, so hang tight. Probably be my only public video of the day. I'm live privately on Patreon, patreon.com/Dave Neal. If you want to be a part of the private membership community where we give a whole hell of a lot of content for you. But it's kind of like a vacation week. There's really no news before next week's start of The Bachelorette, July 8th. So we'll get into some things that are in the podcast sphere. Kaitlyn Bristowe says she knew it was time to walk away and was interviewed by Kristen Cavallari. I think this was in Nashville. We got to get me on Kristen's show if she's in Nashville here. I hear she's got a pretty nice sized home. So open the gates up. Let's do it. So this is our podcast, Let's Be Honest, which is great because Kaitlyn's got that song, If I'm Being Honest. Well, we want everyone to be honest, even if it's going to trigger a bunch of people online. Why is she being honest? Well, the show's called Let's Be Honest. Yeah, but I don't want her to be honest. Just take the drama, you know? There's so many people out there that say, why is Kaitlyn Bristowe still talking about her breakup? Why do you care? I mean, it's entertainment news. Either watch it or don't. Or I guess the other option is hate watch it and then comment about how much you don't like Kaitlyn, and maybe it'll make you feel better about your life. Oh boy, that's a good winning plan. Anyhow, here's what Kaitlyn had to say about knowing as the breakup with Jason Tartick was about to happen, how much of a bashing she was going to take. Let's have a listen.
Can't keep a guy, and it's always...
Oh, hold on. Let's go back a minute here. Sorry about that.
Hot and crazy and news and headlines, and then, give it a week and it'll die out. But I mean, the shelf life of this breakup has actually been quite a while, but I think it's because social media.
Yeah.
And people know our relationship, and we were together for 5 years. They were invested. They cared. Mm-hmm. But I do find it so interesting, and you and I have talked about this so many times, where I had to mentally prepare myself for being destroyed on social media just because the other person seems perfect to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why Jason, I don't want to say seems perfect, but, and again, it's no knock on him. He's a little bit more guarded, so he doesn't share a lot of things publicly. His podcast is more financial based, and it's kind of apolitical. And when you're in that niche, you don't get exposed the way you do when you're in Kaitlyn's niche. Kaitlyn's niche is the parasocial relationship her audience has with her. The good ones, those that love her, which is probably 99% of her audience, they show up to her events. They cry when they meet her. I mean, people do this. I mean, guys, I'm not saying this for any egotistical reasons. It is such an honor when you get to meet people like after a stand-up show. When I had my show in Arizona, we had 100 people. It took me 2 hours. We had a 2-hour long meet and greet, right? If you were there, you understand. And because this year we had a lot of heavy conversations and my relationship, and I put myself out there in different ways. We had so many people come up to me in tears and tell me their story. And it's such a lovely thing. With all of that love comes people that are hurting. And those people that hate watch her, that want to pick her apart, that want to talk about Botox or this, or you're this age, so you should be this far along, you shouldn't be talking. Those people, they just chose chaos. And they exist out there, and they'll create a whole snark subreddit just so they can pick her apart. I'm a big energy guy. I believe in the law of attraction, whatever you want to call it, whatever religion you want to attach that to. But like begets like. And if you're out here bashing on somebody because maybe they have a different, ideology than you do, or taking a different road than you are, you're bashing on yourself. That comes right back around. You can't not. That's just how energy works. You're poisoning yourself thinking you're hurting somebody else.
And it must be messy Kaitlyn. Messy Kaitlyn strikes again, can't keep a guy. And it's always, it's so interesting because 97% of my following is women, and a lot of them are so supportive. But I saw a lot of them, even the supporters, turn on me and be like, he was perfect and he loved you, and you don't know what a good thing is when it's right in front of you, and blah, blah. And I was like, it's so frustrating because we are only showing you what we want you to see.
Yeah. And look, it doesn't mean Jason's not a good guy. It's just how dare people think they have any clue, including myself, what went down in that relationship. Doesn't mean he's a bad guy at all. but it didn't work out for a lot of reasons. And she's going to talk about it, especially when asked. I did a podcast, I think it aired today, Rose Pricks. And I was asked about a falling out that was had. I don't want to say I had because I didn't have that much to do with it, but a falling out between a friend of mine and me. And I tried to give my honest answer, but then, that person might be like, Dave, why are you talking about this on podcast? Well, because I was asked and because people care. And when people care, that's part of the gasoline that fuels the economy of being a content creator is people care. And you're never going to get 100% people care in a positive way. And it sucks.
Okay, I'm not kidding. I swear to God, it is always the opposite of what someone's image is.
Yes.
I've said it a million times on the podcast. I'll say it a million more. People are never what they seem, ever.
Yeah.
And it is usually the opposite person who should be getting shit for it. It really is. And I think it's easy for girls to get shit.
I can tell right now, Kaitlyn's like, oh boy, hold on a second. Because I'm standing by this. I'm not saying I think Jason's conniving because he comes off clean. That's what Kristen's saying here. I reject that on a general level. Now, are there cases where you've got some crystal clean pastor who's telling you like everyone should be faithful and then you find out he's banging his babysitter? Yeah, no, those cases absolutely exist. But I think most people will give you the version of themselves they feel comfortable sharing, and there might be another version of them when they're having a bad day. Sure, not everybody cries in front of the camera if they're having a bad day. People associate and communicate with their audience in different ways, but I don't think that means Jason's a bad guy. I reject that.
Shit, like you're a mess. Because women want to just tear other women down.
Of course.
But my God, I can just say as your friend, I saw you try I saw you put your heart and soul into it and really try everything. And if it's just not there, it's not there. And thank God you did it now instead of marrying him.
Well, and I'm like, what was I supposed to do? Marry him to please my Instagram followers?
It's like, what?
That would be crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah, Kaitlyn, you should have married him and had babies and then be a grandma because they're going to have babies, all because you want to make sure these Instagram audience people are happy.
And I think about this all the time too with social media. It's just such an illusion. And I obviously feed into the illusion because I'm putting out what I want people to see. I try really hard to mix in some real moments and talk about my anxiety and certain things. But like at the end of the day, it's say I did 10 Instagram stories a day, which seems like, I don't know, 10 to 15 is a lot. Like clicking through, you're like, wow, that person on the other end of that thinks they know you and that they're with you their whole day. And then that's your whole personality. They see you as one-dimensional from your Instagram story. And you're like, what about the other 24 hours in the day where I'm like, you have no idea what I'm doing, feeling, saying, hanging out with, like nothing.
It's kind of like how my Instagram, rightfully so, has become a place where I get to share all of my baby photos and baby videos, right? But I do that mainly, like the baby's always sleeping when I'm recording because I have a quiet baby. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not necessarily only making content with my baby. It's just that happens to be like, all right, there's an adorable thing happening. Let me cover it right now. Right. So anyway, not to relate it back to my baby, but they go on and on. Let's keep it going.
So true.
And it's fun. And I'm glad people like to follow me and be in and feel like they know me. And if it's supportive and healthy and happy, that's great. But like the other percentage, I'm like, it almost makes me feel like what a waste of one life that you're given to follow me and think like obsess over what I'm doing in a negative way.
So I wish we had, this is what I think would be a good use of artificial intelligence. People say, oh, you don't want to live in an echo chamber. I do. I would love, the internet's so cruel. The problem is if I say, you know what, I'm never going to go on Reddit again. If there's a Reddit thread where people are talking trash, but like put it this way, when I was blasted last week, 2 weeks ago by somebody on social media, 1,000 people sent it to me. You know what I mean? My buddy Steve was like, hey, did you see what so-and-so said? I was like, no, I'm out to dinner. I didn't see what so-and-so said. And it immediately sucked me into a vortex of doom, right? So you can't get out of the way of it. I wish there was artificial intelligence that just said, look, unless you're sending me a nice thing or a neutral thing about me, don't send it. I don't want to know. Because you can't avoid, like, I have such a great relationship with so many different people in my audience. A lot of you guys have my phone number or my Instagram. It's almost like, whether it's my phone number or Instagram, it doesn't matter. It's going to go to my phone. That's why like having someone's number is no big deal. Like, who cares if you have my number? It doesn't mean I'm going to answer it or respond, but it's the same thing if you DM me. But I just wish there was a software that would say, look, unless you're a vetted person who I've approved that's not out to get me, I don't want to hear from you. Like, you don't have the right to talk to me. You haven't earned my time. Like if someone wanted to talk trash to me after a stand-up show, and I always relate it back to that because that's like a live, very honest, conversation. Let's be honest. But if I wouldn't let someone talk trash, I'd be like, get the hell out of here. I'm not going to waste my God-given moments on you loser. But sometimes when it's in your DMs, you're scrolling through something decent and then all of a sudden it shows up and you're like, oh boy, I didn't ask for this. It's like the door was unlocked. We need to lock up the doors. We need to do a better job locking up the doors with our social media. I mean, I wish I could exist in a world where I was, like, say you're a movie star. You just need your agent, your 5 friends, your parents, your husband, whatever, and that's it. And then you can turn your comments off. None of it matters. You don't need to associate with them. But in the world of content creation and stand-up comedy, and you need, and I do enjoy those relationships when they're good. But when they're bad, oh my gosh, it's like people have the keys to your heart and they just rip it apart and stomp on it.
I know. One, I don't have to tell you this, but like those people are just unhappy.
Totally.
It has nothing to do with you at the end of the day.
No, it's sad for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so that's one thing that you are not afraid to do is you aren't afraid to be vulnerable on social media and, show yourself crying and show that you have bad days. And I do think that's really relatable. I think, for me personally, I think it's scary to be that vulnerable on social media because if I were to say, okay, here's why I'm actually really upset, and then people were to be negative, I'd be like, oh my God, I can't handle this. You know what I mean?
They're like validating your insecurities.
Like,
And that's what's tough too is like if I responded with my true feelings about how I felt after getting blasted, then a lot of my audience would send more hate. And it's like, it's just not a fair conversation. And that's what makes it so challenging. It's like, you don't get to have these fair conversations sometimes. And you just need to be okay with that. Someone in our comment section on patreon.com/Dave Neal just said, hey, don't forget the old adage, what someone else thinks of me is none of my business. Again, I love that, but it's really tough because a lot of people don't know what it's like to have a thread about you that's full of misinformation, mischaracterizations, or frankly, just people that don't like what you do. It's just a tough place. And I'm not saying the right way to handle it is to snap back at everybody, but I do think that you got to give grace for people like Kaitlyn, who are the type that are, people pleasers that do want to understand why someone doesn't like them. And, you might say, well, that's such an insecure thing. You know what? Jump on Zoom with me right now and put your face out there and see how it feels. Now, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, but I'm telling you right now, it doesn't look good. Now, I shared some insecurities on today's podcast. I think it's worth listening to, The Rush Hour with Dave Neal. And I was a little insecure because I did Kaitlyn's podcast and they had not created a reel about me. So the podcast came out yesterday morning and I was like, all right, no big deal. Like, I'm not famous like a lot of these other people. I'm not Kristen Cavallari or whatever. And then I was like, honestly, it wasn't a big deal. I was like, I get it, And then they dropped this real epic reel and I was like, oh, I felt so much love. Have a watch.
Now, does this scare you at all?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
And it's what led to all the evidence I've uncovered.
Okay. Dave, could you just take it away?
Clayton Eckert, he was accused of being the father of somebody's unborn, never-born twins. We found out she faked cancer and committed all this other fraud, and I've got receipts. Since that last podcast, she has retained a new lawyer, threatened to sue me for $140 million in defamation. The HCG level, that is $131,000. The real document on the right is 102, period.
Damn.
There it is, out now. He's back. So if you like what I do, go show some love to the Off the Vine podcast. Give them a good review, rate them, because they've had me on their show 4 times now. I don't know how big the Off the Vine audience is, but stats don't lie. Their podcast page alone has 250,000, and so we appreciate them sharing their platform with us. To those in the comment section that are going to say, Dave, you're just defending Kaitlyn because she puts you on her show. You're biased. My response to that is, suck my... Okay, we'll be back later. Bye, everybody.